All right, everybody, it's Friday, a beautiful Friday, a little chilly, and we've got another project, so let's see what we've got. So, this is today's project. I got the machine sitting here. It's pretty much warmed up. Touched up a few of the teeth from that pond mulching job. Hopefully we don't run into any more gators on this job. So what we're doing is we're gonna go right into here, mulch, go back about 20 feet or so, maybe 30, and just work our way all the way down this line of all this nonsense and just mulch all this out and clean it up, and then just kind of weave back through here and clean all this up. And what this is where my dumpster guy stores his dumpsters, and this stuff has been slowly been just creeping back this way, and he cleared a little bit of this with his tractor, but it just didn't have enough power, you know, to really clean this up like he wanted it. The real big issue here is right back in there, that's a swamp, and that was the main reason I didn't bring the skid steer, because that falls off somewhere back in there, and I didn't want to bring and you can already see, like, there's a big hole there, especially right here. That whole thing starts to really fall off, and there's a lot of debris out here as well, though I'm getting ready to change the teeth anyway in the mulcher, but there's a lot of debris in here. But this is a great job for the mulcher, because I can mulch out in front of me or off to the side down in there, and I don't have to track down into that and worry about getting stuck. So hopefully we don't get stuck. But all of this in here, just to give you an idea, whoa, used to look like that over there. It was all swamp, and this was all filled in when this road was built 50 odd years ago or longer, and we got to get all that down. So let's hop in the machine. Fingers crossed everything goes good, and let's get started. All right, everyone, here's where we be with this job. And I want to stop for a minute and get into a little bit of an explanation. If you don't want to hear that, just go ahead and skip ahead. But so what this is, and I didn't really know this, it looked like it, but I wasn't for sure until you get in here and you start cutting it. What this is a good example. This is, I call it Wisteria. And I've did some of this stuff in a backyard. If you guys remember that video, it was called Wisteria Hell. I did about 4,000 or 5,000 square feet of this in a backyard. So I'm losing my voice a little bit here too. I did about 4,000 or 5,000 square feet of this stuff in the backyard, and it's hell. It's super hard to mulch because it's like trying to mulch nylon rope. And it gets bound up in that cutter. You cannot cut this stuff with a rotary cutter. That's why when I started with this, I was like, maybe I could bring the MTL over here and kind of finish this off a little bit. This stuff will get sucked up into that rotary head and go and bind it up like very quickly. It's like it'd be like trying to mow nylon rope with a lawnmower. It just can't be done. So, and this stuff, a lot of stuff when you mulch it, like these trees right here, these are not Wisteria. These little things right here, when you mulch those and you mulch them down to the ground, they don't come back. Something new might grow, but those are not coming back. This stuff doesn't go anywhere. It's gonna come right back, and it's gonna come back with a vengeance. There's a good example of it. You see how it's just stringy this stuff is, and it's just rope. And that's after going through the mulcher a couple of times. And the thicker it is, and this stuff's pretty thick in here, the harder it is to mulch. And I didn't want to waste the owner's money over here trying to do this when this is just going to come right back. This is a temporary kind of fix to a very serious problem. And calling him and talking to him, really you've got two real options in my mind with this, is to spray it and kill it, or rip it out of the ground. Come in here with a dozer or a large excavator and just rip all this ground out and physically get rid of it. And I don't even know if spraying it, how well, because I don't do herbicide application. I don't know how well spraying it would even work, but I think it would kill it. So after talking to him, he just wants me to spend the day over here, just clear as much as I can to get him some more room for these dumpsters and clean this up as best we can. And he's going to take it from there. Because when I first saw this, I was like, well, if that's just that stuff, like those little trees, I can go through this pretty quickly in, you know, a day. But to do all of this as far back as he wants, I mean, you're talking probably 2 days with that machine. And I thought I could even come over here with the skid steer too, because the office is just down the road, and chew up some of this as well, and some of the thinner parts. You can't do it. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm just going to keep going. We'll get him as much room as we can out here today and make the best of it. And he understands that this stuff's just gonna, unless we do something with it, either get it out of the ground or spray it, it's coming right back. But for now, he needs some more room for dumpsters, and that's what we're going to get him, and just do the best we can. So, all right, Munchie, let's get back to work. So this is like a whole tree, literally, of this stuff. And you can see exactly what I'm talking about right here. The mulcher is completely bound up now with this stuff. And it just sucks it in. And it just wraps up in there. And there, now I gotta dig all this out. Oh man. And it doesn't matter how sharp the teeth are. I sharpened the teeth before we started. It doesn't matter. So let's dig all this out and try to get back to it. All right, everyone, here's what we got. Again, sorry I'm losing my voice here a little bit for whatever reason, I don't know, all of a sudden, but this turned out pretty good. Got this whole basically line cut back. I basically just walked the Mini in right down there and just walked it all the way down and cut it back. And that's close to how far he wanted to go back. He said about, from where this started right in here, about 30 feet. And that's pretty close. So I think we're pretty good with about how far he wanted to go back with this. For the most part, he might, because like that looks really close in. There's a swamp right there. And that's like really close to the water right there. But I think it may kind of go kind of back, like curve back. So you might have a little more room back in there, but it's pretty close. But my main concern with this, once I started mulching it and found out it was this wisteria crap, was the fact that mulching is not the answer to this stuff. It's going to grow right back and relatively quickly. Sometimes when you mulch like pines and cedars and some of this other stuff, when you mulch it down flush to the ground, it's done, it's gone, it dies. But this stuff, whole different story. So my main concern was I just didn't want to waste the client's money. He's a good friend of mine. I've been knowing him for 20 years. He's been doing our dumpster service for at least that. And my concern was I can mulch this, I can give you some room, but that's not really going to cure your problem here like in mulching most other areas would. So I was like, would you maybe want to consider having somebody come out and maybe spray this if it can be sprayed, and then mulch it, or have somebody take maybe a dozer with a root rake and just rake it out of the ground and either haul it off or maybe burn it or then mulch it once it's out of the ground. But he needs room for his dumpsters in here and he needs it pretty quick. So he's like, no, just do as much as you can today. Give me as much room as you can in a day, and we'll see where we're at. And I think we're pretty close to that. I mean, he's got a lot more room in here to put these dumpsters than what he's got. So I think we're pretty good on there, but the issue still remains that this stuff is going to grow back. And he knows that, and he's going to have somebody come in here and try to figure out how he can keep it from growing back. And maybe try to do something with the rest of this. They want a barrier, they want some privacy barrier, but they don't want this stuff to start creeping back this way, because it will do that. But that's pretty good progress for that little mulcher. It didn't matter if you had a skid steer in here with this or whatever you had was still going to struggle in this wisteria or whatever it is. I've always called it wisteria because the first time I ever encountered it, the guy I was out there working for called it wisteria, so that's what I've always called it. But any kind of mulcher in here, skid steer, unless you had a big dedicated machine that really had enough power and torque to power through that stuff when it wrapped up, you were going to have a time in here with it. And if you were trying to mulch this with carbide hammers on a mulcher head, you'd have gotten nowhere, absolutely nowhere. And so that's why I tell people ask me all the time, what's the best setup for them? And I'm like, well, what are you mulching? What's your market? What's your application, and what kind of vegetation are you mulching? Down here where I'm at, and a lot of this stringy vine stuff, that we've got, you have to have knives. What people call knives or chisels. You have to have these type of teeth. Carbides just don't work here. They might work in some other markets, and they work in many markets. But around here where I'm at, in the low country of South Carolina, carbides are not the way to go. And if you'd have come in here with carbides, unless it would have been on a really big dedicated machine, even then you might would have struggled. You'd have had a time in here. It would have been very hard, if not impossible. And a rotary head cannot cut this stuff at all. As bad as it wraps up around the drum, it wraps up around a rotary cutter really bad. I fought with that with the MTL on that thing one time, cutting some wisteria, and it was bad. I think I wrapped that stuff up around that cutter probably half a dozen times in like an hour and a half. It took me 30 minutes to get it out of there one time. It was horrible. But this all cleaned up nice, and I'm out of here. It's Friday. I'm ready for the weekend. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm gonna load this thing up and get out of here. It's a beautiful afternoon, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye, everybody.